On his journey to founding the University of Notre Dame, Father Edward Sorin, who came to America from his native France, trekked with 7 of his Holy Cross brothers all the way from Vincennes, Indiana to South Bend, the future site of the university. This past August, a group of pilgrims retraced that journey of over 300 miles to honor the 175th anniversary of Notre Dame's founding. The Notre Dame Club of France also celebrated that tradition, walking a trail of their own in Father Sorin's home country. Live with us now is a former president of Notre Dame's Alumni Club of France, Christopher Renner. Hey, Christopher, thank you so much. Welcome to the show. So first, can you tell us a little bit about the history of the Notre Dame Club of France?
Yeah, it really started in earnest about 20 years ago with a guy named John Fonseca, who was the initial guy to take up the program. He was an alum from back in the 60s, actually, and he was a longtime resident there. And he started to bring people together in his home for football watches and things like that. And it just kind of evolved over the years. We also connected pretty early with the SunDef program, the overseas program, with the exchange students from Notre Dame down in Angers, and we try to get them up for things like Thanksgiving dinners and things like that. And of course, anytime somebody from Notre Dame University would come through, we try to connect to them for a day or something like that. I was lucky enough to be named president of the Alumni Club, I think in 2011, after John moved back home to St. Louis, and ran it until I returned back to the States this past August, and it was a pretty enjoyable role.
And we mentioned it in honor of Notre Dame's 175th anniversary. Members of the Club of France, including you set out on your own trail from Vincennes, France to Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. So how did that trail compare to the over 300 miles walked by Father Sorin?
Well, it wasn't quite as heroic, let's put it that way. Actually, Vincennes is just outside of the border of Paris. So it's about an 8-mile hike, to be quite honest, but it was a good one. We did about 2.5 hours into Notre Dame Cathedral in literally the heart of Paris. And it was a beautiful day, as you mentioned, in the summertime. And it was a good brisk walk. And as you know, Paris is full of history. So it seemed like every few blocks, we'd cross something that was full of history. We went by, starting at the Chateau de Vincennes, which is where a lot of the early kings of France lived. And then, a few blocks away from that, Place de la Nation, which is what they built in celebration of the Republic. And then we went by where the Bastille used to be before we ended up at the Cathedral of Notre Dame itself. So it was a good day walk, but certainly nothing as long as what everybody did in Indiana.
And what happened at the end of the trek once you reached Notre Dame Cathedral?
Well, first of all, it was just great because no matter how many times you go by Notre Dame Cathedral, it's striking. And I mean, even from a good distance away, it's already looming up from the island it's on. And it's just so impressive. And you get more and more excited as you're getting closer. And when we got there, we timed it almost perfectly. They have an international mass every Sunday. And we got there about 15, 20 minutes before and came inside to the cathedral itself, which, again, the interior is even more beautiful than the outside. And it was a pretty full packed mass. I would say there were probably close to 1,000 people in there. And it was beautiful. I mean, with the whole chorus, the organs going and everything else. So it was kind of a nice end to the trip. Before, of course, you got to eat in Paris. So we planned lunch at a nearby cafe and dragged that out for a pretty good long time because there's usually a few courses involved, and it made for a good full day.
Sounds like an afternoon I want to be a part of. Maybe I need to come to France anytime soon. What do you think is the importance in keeping Father Sorin's legacy alive by doing something like this?
Well, first of all, as we know from the name of Notre Dame, the Order of the Holy Cross was founded in Le Mans, which is about 3 hours south of Paris. And I've actually been fortunate enough to drive through there. And I stopped at the chapel where, believe it or not, there's a stained glass window in the chapel of the Holy Cross Brothers that shows the Golden Dome in there of our Notre Dame. So everything started in France before Father Soren and Moreau came over to start the university. So it's always great to kind of call back to our roots. And we still have a good, strong program going in Angers with the students.
Christopher, thank you so much for joining us. Go Irish.